All right, so time to pass it over to the amazing Mickey Reynolds, Grid 110 CEO. A little bit about Mickey. She co-founded Grid 110 in 2014, has 15 years of experience working in tech, ranging from digital marketing and creative services to software development and e-commerce. After managing digital products at global entertainment corporations like MGM Studios and 20th Century Fox, and heading up operations and product for a software development startup, she went on to launch the downtown LA location for a tech education company, General Assembly. Currently at Grid 110, Mickey focuses on steering our strategic direction to create a more inclusive startup ecosystem, fostering community, and connecting the dots for entrepreneurs through access to critical resources. Welcome to the stage, Mickey.
Thanks, Maya. I am stealing that from my bio because that was better than whatever I have written on LinkedIn. I'm so excited to see you all in this space today. If you've been paying attention to the news, it's been a crazy, wild few weeks on the topic of financial health. So we want this to be a really valuable use of your time. But as Maya said, we also really welcome your contributions and engagement. So please don't be shy about using the chat. I see that Dana and Jamie have already dropped in some messages there. Please use it for any questions that you may have, share your own insight, or even communicate with each other. We're all friends now, so think of this as your personal group chat for the next few hours. My only ask is that you be respectful of each other. So Maya mentioned a little bit about me. I'm a founder, a startup advisor, a community builder, and really an advocate for overlooked founders. I've assessed thousands of companies and directly advised a few hundred of them. We founded Grid 110 8 years ago with the mission to foster the most thriving, inviting, and inclusive community for entrepreneurs in LA. Through our no-cost, no-equity startup programs, we provide founders with really a growing community of fellow entrepreneurs just like yourself, expert mentorship, and crucial resources. We've supported 270 companies across various stages and industries who have gone on to raise nearly $120 million in funding. Some of those are here today with us. Before we get into our panel, I just wanted to take a few minutes to share observations from my time working with startups and highlighting a few of the commonalities that I've seen in the most successful ones. So first, I want to talk about the importance of community. Community is one of our personal core values, and I see it as bringing people together through shared experiences. I would love to create a sense of that right here, right now, and encourage you all, just as some people have already done, to get to know each other. So find the Zoom chat and share your name, location, and maybe what you're working on. Entrepreneurship can be extremely lonely and isolating, even if you have a co-founder or team. And as a first-time founder, you can often find yourself with analysis paralysis, with the thoughts just really swirling around your head about how to start, what to do, where to go next. Seeking out community is really a way to get out of that echo chamber and immerse yourself with others to kick around ideas, seek feedback, and really hold yourself accountable. This could be in a Slack group, a program, a meetup, or even an event just like this. Maybe you'll find someone in a similar space or location, maybe even working on something that you'd like to learn more about. Some of the most brilliant entrepreneurs that I know realize the importance of surrounding them with other founders, mentors, advisors. They knew that they could go much further together and not by themselves. So if you don't already, I challenge yourself to find a community in your own way that supports and nurtures your own growth. Thank you, Lori. You're also the best. The second commonality I've seen is the ability to articulate these three things. Why you? Why this? Why now? So in terms of why you, how are you uniquely positioned to build this particular business that you're working on? Do you have any related work experience in it? Does it come from a personal pain point? Have you been able to find a co-founder or maybe a team to really complement the areas that you're not as strong in? It really should come from a place of passion, that you are strongly focused and motivated to solve whatever problem that you're solving. And that goes into the second point, which is why this? What is the problem that you're solving? How have you been able to validate that problem actually exists? I see a lot of people come up with ideas for things that they want to build, and they're very solutions focused, but you have to really get to the root of what is the problem that that solution is trying to solve. And how is that solution better or even different than anything else that already exists out there? The third, why now? Timing is everything. Why is what you're building needed right now? Is there something in terms of trends? Is there something in terms of things that have changed in kind of the marketplace or the economy? I mean, I think about the way that we use Zoom every day now. I didn't use Zoom before March of 2020, but now it really rules my everyday. And it's how Zoom has really been able to capitalize on the space that they're in, because they had the best product at the time people needed it. And the why now, the timing was everything for them. Have you been able to talk about, to your potential customers to get a sense for, what is it that they want and what would they pay for it? So founders that have a really strong sense of the why you, why this, why now, I feel like are able to go further. The third thing is something that I wish that entrepreneurs would do more of, and that's really to extend yourself a little bit of grace and celebrate the little wins. We can be incredibly hard on ourselves and get stuck in these never-ending cycles of comparison, not really being where you think that you should be, comparing yourself to others because of things that you see on social media or in the news. But a friendly reminder that we are all really just trying to figure it out, and your journey is uniquely your own. And when you overlook the little wins, you are really overlooking progress. So if you're feeling open to it, again, some engagement in the chat, I would love for you to share a little win that you have accomplished recently. It could be something in small or large significance or size. It could be simply just showing up here today. Maybe you've launched something, you got your first or 1,000th customer, or you've had a really amazing breakthrough moment. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing, just acknowledge that win out loud to yourself. Or maybe congratulate somebody else on theirs. So my little win is, as an introvert and somebody who is still not fully comfortable speaking in public, is that I continue to push myself outside of my comfort zone to moderate this virtual event today and an in-person panel tomorrow. So if you have a win that you would like to share, please drop it in the chat. The last point I have is to be creative with your capital. That's why we're all here today. I know many of you came here because you're interested in raising venture capital and wanted to hear about the different experiences of those who have successfully done it. But I also want to offer the caveat that venture capital is not meant for all companies. It's actually not meant for most companies. Of all the startups in the world, only 0.5, that's 0.5%, actually raise venture capital. And your ability to raise or not raise is not a correlation of how successful you will be. Let me repeat that. Raising venture capital does not make you successful. You can absolutely be successful without it, which really comes down to how you define success for your own business. We are huge proponents of understanding the various capital options that are out there, from grants to loans to equity crowdfunding. And if you haven't already tuned in, Maya hosts an incredible series on virtual funding pathways every month that spotlight 3 to 4 sources of capital. All previous events have been recorded and posted to our YouTube channel, so you should definitely tap in. The most successful businesses that I know leverage many of these in their early days, as well as their later stages. I know a founder who's raised $200,000 in grants and is flying out to a pitch competition this weekend to get 500,000 more. And also a shameless plug for our newsletter, which Maya also curates, that includes numerous grant and program opportunities that you all should definitely be applying for. What I do want to celebrate in the final days of Women's History Month is how statistically significant it is for women founders, Black founders, Latina founders, queer founders, and other historically excluded groups to actually raise venture capital. And it's exponentially harder as a solo founder. I think we're all aware of the abysmal numbers released every year, hovering at less than 2%. So when we have a founder that accomplishes something that seems nearly impossible to do and is changing the world while they're doing it to build something truly meaningful, that is absolutely something to celebrate. And that feels like a perfect segue to the incredible panel of speakers we have here today, all of whom have raised at least $1 million and are building world-changing products. I am honored to join them, having raised nearly $3 million for our nonprofit over the last few years, and have them share their experiences for you and demystify the fundraising journey. I would love to invite Crystal, Alison, and Lori to join me up on the virtual stage. Hi, Alison. Hi, Lori. Hi, Crystal.
Hello.
Hey, everyone. Good to see you.
Hi.
Thank you all for joining us today. So how about we go around? I would love for you each to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about the company that you've built. Alison, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Sure. Thanks for having us, Mickey. I'm Alison Greenberg, co-founder and CEO of Ruth Health. My co-founder Audrey Wu and I started the company in earnest in about January of 2020. We were one of, if not the first, Grid 110 cohort in the middle of COVID. So I distinctly remember I was quarantined here in the Bronx in New York City. My co-founder is based in LA, and we had gone back and forth until COVID hit. But Grid 110 was a game changer for us. And it absolutely sort of charted the course of Ruth Health. We are a virtual clinic for pregnancy and postpartum, and we provide life-saving and life-affirming services from doulas to pelvic floor training to lactation support, C-section recovery, and corrective exercise video series. And our services are not just for pregnant people or birthing people and new moms. We also serve dads and non-birthing partners. And we're really proud to have come out of this program. We've also done the United Healthcare Accelerator, Y Combinator, and we're now part of the 2023 NYC Women's Health Summit hosted by the Mayor of New York, Mayor Eric Adams. So we're working on a lot of things on both coasts, but really excited to be here.
Amazing. Thanks, Alison. Crystal, do you want to go next?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Crystal Adesanya. I'm founder and CEO of Kiira Health. A little bit of a backstory. So I started the company, when was this? This is 2019, like towards the end of wait, hold on. It was in 2019, yes, when I started. It feels like so many years now, when I started the company. And we didn't actually, the reason why I was thinking about the actual year was we didn't actually incorporate until after we did the program at Grid 110. So we at the time, myself and my co-founder had started the program. I met Mickey and team at Cross Campus in downtown LA, just through being there all the time. My husband's company was actually in the same building as them. So I heard about the program. I actually saw the program in the bathroom one day. And I was like, oh, I'm going to apply to this because I have this big idea and I don't know what to do. So I started the program. I remember the first day of being at the program after being interviewed by Mickey and team, we were asked to come and pitch our company. And I went in front and I kind of just really froze. And I was just like, I really don't know what to say. And, after lots of coaching and everything, let's just say I became really good at pitching. And I'll talk a little bit about that, how Grid 110 kind of like molded me and formed me into kind of what I've done, over the past couple of years. So just a little bit about our company itself. So Kiira Health is a virtual first women's healthcare company for women of color. We're focused on increasing access to health resources for young people, young women, around primary care, gynecology, and mental health. We have a nationwide telemedicine platform. So we're actually the very first Black-owned, women's-owned nationwide virtual care platform across all 50 states. So we're licensed to practice anywhere. So you can actually book a visit with one of our providers from pretty much anywhere. And right now we've launched our very first in-person location in Los Angeles. So if any of you is around, please stop by the Kiira Health Clinic on Melrose. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Excited to be here and to share more.
Thanks, Crystal. Over to you, Lori.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lori Shao, and I am the CEO and founder of Finli. I am a first-generation immigrant. I'm very privileged to have parents who are blue-collar entrepreneurs. I remember growing up in the U.S. in a flea market in Hialeah and just feeling in awe of my parents and all of the aunts and uncles all around us, trying to make something out of nothing, being so resourceful, and just don't take no for an answer, and just like just the best entrepreneurs I know. And at that point, I realized that there is a gap in access when it comes to technology and solutions for those who look like my parents. And then you fast forward to about 30 years later, not much has changed for them. So that led to the genesis of Finli. This is a career transition for me. I've been in financial services and banking for the past 16 or 17 years prior to building Finli in 2019 and launching in 2020. And really for the sole purpose of building something for undersupported communities, for small, medium-sized micro enterprises, for something to call their own, right? And specifically what we provide is we're a digital back office for small businesses. And within the digital back office, CRM, communications, invoicing, payment collections, all of the different tools that small businesses would have to cobble together to figure out how to talk to one another and really optimize for their business, to the larger businesses that may have access to a NetSuite, an Oracle, an SAP, or have capital to bring on a team. Small, medium-sized businesses never have the luxury to have that type of exposure, and so that's who Finli was built for. And Finli stands for financial lift, right? So it's really very much in our DNA to bridge that access gap for those who are truly undersupported. And I'm so glad to be here. When I joined Grid 110 with Mickey, it was just myself and a laptop. I think I was still employed when I interviewed with Mickey. And Mickey was like, you have to do this full time. So the program started, I think, on April 2nd, and my last day at JP Morgan was April 1st. So it was very close, cutting it close. But I mean, the corporate life was just a lifetime away, it seems. My life, everything that I do, all of the things that motivates me and my family is the impact that we're making through Finli. And thank to Mickey and Grid 110 and all of our supporters, we're here today. So thank you.
Thanks, Lori. So we have three amazing women building in actually very difficult industries, healthcare, specifically women's healthcare, which has been supremely overlooked, which is why I'm super grateful for the work that Alison and Crystal are doing, as well as at SMB Tech and FinTech with Lori. We had one more founder who was going to join us, Kimberly from Hype Advice. She unfortunately had a last-minute family emergency, so we'll keep her in our thoughts. I'm sorry to miss her. Okay, so we all know that each of you has raised at least $1 million. But we know that can happen in different stages for people and different times in their kind of company life cycles. Would love to hear about, where was your company at when you first took in your first source of capital, and whether that was, what type of capital was that?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in, Mickey. This is a comedy of errors, I think, for a lot of female founders. You really kind of dread the process of fundraising because your odds, right? And back in 2021, when Audrey and I raised our first pre-seed round, I believe the stat was 2.2% of venture capital goes to female founders, and then just cut down from there if you're talking about women of color like Audrey. Now it's 1.9%, right? So I say this not to be discouraging, but I say this to remind you that you can do incredible things if you set your mind to it. And also, there's people in that 1.9%. There's not a lot of us, but you're looking at 3 women who beat the odds. And it's in part, I think, due to Grid 110. So, just recognize that although the odds are stacked against you, you have an incredible advantage in this community and also in yourself. The fact that you took the initiative to join this community and this accelerator, and that you're probably working a full-time job while you're building your new business, that's different. And not everybody who goes out for capital does that. So that being said, Lori's story was making me smile because I was also working full-time while I was doing Grid 110. I was, in deep COVID, I was freelancing as a brand strategist for a bunch of healthcare companies and for some brands like Verizon. And I couldn't tell anyone what I was doing. And they were like, why are you so tired? It's a juggling act. So when we finally set out to raise a pre-seed round, Ruth Health was an idea. It was not a functioning business. We had no revenue because we built in healthcare, and Crystal will know this well, especially because she has brick and mortar. Like, healthcare is not a cheap industry. It is not an easy industry to build in without capital, which is probably why pre-seed rounds in healthcare are actually a little more common than in software or maybe even fintech. But it took us 7 grueling months of hitting the pavement with a deck that honestly looked like a piece of trash. We were just so determined to raise that pre-seed round so that we could start to acquire what was originally our business concept, ultrasound units, and do in-home ultrasounds for pregnant folks across the US. So we had a hardware demand. We had a reason to raise pre-seed. I think that's the first question you have to ask yourself. Do I have a reason to raise a pre-seed round when I'm pre-revenue? And we did. And people told us we were nuts. They told us that we had no chance. Neither of us were physicians, although we have a chief medical officer. That was a piece of pushback we often got. And there was blatant sexism. And I'm just not going to sugarcoat it. That is always present. With my co-founder being an AAPI woman, with me being a gay woman, like, we just knew that we were going to be up against a lot. But all I can say is lean on the community. We eventually raised $725,000 in a pre-seed round. And that took, like I said, 7-8 months of grueling work. I think I met with 170 investors to get there, and angels were a big part of that. Then after we had raised the round, we had already finished Grid 110, we entered Y Combinator, and everything changed. And so this is not a Y Combinator panel. I don't want to talk about it too much, but I do want to say that that was a massive, like, tank full of rocket fuel for our fundraising. We raised $2.4 million in 2 weeks. So just to give you a sense of how the fundraising timeline works, pre-seed, pre-revenue, pre-product, grueling, horrible, would never want to do it again, but wouldn't have the business I have today without it. So for those of you who are at that pre-seed stage, which I think a lot of us are, leaning on your community, getting feedback on your deck, and then eventually for us writing an investment memo, which is different from a deck. It was a 4-page document with pros, with a lot of detail about our competitive set, about our TAM, about our business idea and the opportunity, about how we would achieve product market fit. Like, that investment memo really sealed the deal for us with the pre-seed round. So happy to talk more about that, but I think these other two ladies probably have a lot to share.
I can go. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Alison. I remember meeting you back then, and I'm so excited for everything that you guys have done so far, you and Audrey. I'm a super fan, as you know. So a little bit about my own fundraising journey. It kind of like, it's interesting, right? When you talk about, the stats for, women raising and women of color, and like when you think about Black women specifically. So I'm an immigrant, by the way. I'm originally from Nigeria. I came to the US for college when I was 17. So a lot of things being in America was really new for me. And I started the company because, I had a specific health problem in college, that I wanted to address, where I almost died when I was in college, et cetera. And just thinking through, how do you utilize, technology to increase access? Of course, that became formulated more and more through the Grid 110 program, which I'll talk about a little bit more. But, going into fundraising was really interesting because I didn't set out to go into fundraising. When I first started, when you hear the stats, it's really crazy. For Black women is 0.35% of Black women to raise at all $1 million. At the time, I remember, there were less than 20 Black women who had raised at the time that I started this company. Now I'm talking about 2019. So think about that timeline and think about today. Pretty small number. So when you're trying to go into this, you're like, this could never be me. I could never do this. But I just want to see if this company's going to work. And that's what it's about, right? Like, I'm probably never going to be one of the ones who raise venture capital. And that was an honest thought that I had for a very long time, to be very honest. So, going through Good 110, like I said, I didn't know how to pitch. I learned how to do it. In fact, pro of being through the program was we had to come, the next week to do it again. So when you're going to have to do it again, then you prepare more. So one thing that I did was I spent a lot of time planning my pitch, actually recording a pitch and listening to it over and over again throughout the day. That was a way I was able to really nail down what it is I was trying to do. Again, still formulating what the idea really was. And through Grid 110, we ended up doing the pitch competition at the end of the program. Me and my co-founder back then, we ended up winning the pitch competition. And that was, I would say that was a big catalyst for me and a big booster when it came to confidence and being able to speak about what you're doing, right? And it was the first competition I'd ever done in my entire life. And I was so excited. I was like, people actually care about this stuff. Oh my God. And what that did was it actually led me to actually applying to every competition I saw. So I applied to the Afro Tech competition. I applied to Black VC. I applied to Harvard Business School, competition. I applied to so many. CES, New Voices competition. So I applied to a lot of those while I was at Grid 110, and I got accepted into all of them. Again, power of actually doing the pitch at Grid 110 was that I had so much confidence going into that. I think that's the thing about fundraising. It's planning, confidence, and humility. That combination is extremely important. And that's something that I took on going into there. I was like, I've never done this before, but I know I can. And through practicing and everything. So after the Grid 110 competition, I actually won the Afro Tech competition as well. My very first in front of 5,000 people. I was like, you know what? This is how you do it. Okay, I'm gonna keep doing these. So I went to Harvard, I won a competition there. So it was first like 10,000, 50,000, 250,000. Before I knew it, I was winning close to almost $500,000 in just pitch competition, non-dilutive capital. Again, this goes back to what I was saying. I wasn't quite ready to go into VC yet. What I knew I was really ready for was going in front of people and sharing my story and sharing this big idea that I had. Again, I didn't know a lot of Black women who had raised. I didn't have a lot of mentors like that looked exactly like me. But what I knew was I had a captivating story. I had a presence. I was super confident, and I was able to go on those stages and do that. So for a very long time, every single pitch competition that I did, I actually won. So it became this whole thing where I was like, oh, like, I'm gonna do this. And then I had an investor who I met at the Afro Tech competition that was like, I think you should start actually building this thing. I think you should take a break from these pitch competitions. I was like, why? Like, I could keep doing them. But he was right. I think I had matured over time to a point where, it was kind of time to actually hone down and actually see if I could raise. Again, to Alison's point, being in healthcare is extremely expensive, extremely difficult, and it's not something you can just bootstrap all the way. So, one of the things he said was, okay, come back to me in the next 3 months, let me see what you've done, and we'll go from there. So fast forward, all this happened in 2019, like I said, fast forward to 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, I ended up getting into another program. Also, to Alison's point, these programs can be a big catalyst for what you end up doing. So I ended up participating in the 500 Startups program. Very similar to Y Combinator in sense of like being in front of so many investors. I can say we started the program. Again, I had raised all that non-dilutive capital. So I had some leverage going in. I was just like, I'm not going to take a crappy deal. I turned down things that most people would not turn down because I was like, there's no way. I won almost 500K for free. I'm not going to give you my company for this. So this was, my confidence kind of going in. And it was great because going into that through the program, I actually got introduced to the team at Serena Ventures. So Serena Williams is fun. I got introduced to Bumble. Again, there's certain milestones and things that happen that could really be a catalyst for your fundraise. Mine was that. And once that happened and Serena wrote the whole thing about our company, we ended up closing our our pre-seed round. At the time we were raising a $500,000 round, we ended up closing at $1 million. So that was how we raised our first $1 million, because we were able to raise that round. So the round happened in 2 months, not 2 weeks, 2 months. You know, and I say 2 months, 2 months of actually actively fundraising because we had that. But this was a year in the making, by the way. Like I said, going to these competitions, doing all these things, the build up to here, it was not like, oh, you woke up and you fundraised. No, it was like, okay, you know, now you have some kind of presence, people know about you, et cetera, you build some credibility, and now you can go out and fundraise, and that's what happened. Fast forward the following year, we ended up raising another $4 million round, led by some of our existing investors and some few folks, and we launched an in-person clinic as well. Again, the landscape then was very different. As a lot of you know, right now, fundraising is extremely difficult. I cannot overemphasize that. I can't give the same advice that I had when I first raised now. It's very different, but it's not impossible. So happy to talk a little bit more about, you know, what's happening now and things you can do, but that's my story so far. So.
Cool, awesome. For me, fundraising continues to be very difficult. I'd be lying if I said, hey, I love pitching to everybody that I don't know and they have the money or the capital that's able to help us keep going. It is a lot of pressure, and I feel like every single day I'm still trying to condition myself to adapt to this piece of my job. And so since 9.5 million of VC were raised in 2 rounds, a 3.5 million a pre-seed and a $6 million seed. And I would say the catalyst for us is Grid 110. Prior to joining Grid 110, I don't know what a VC was. You know, I didn't go to a major college. You know, I went to a state school. I didn't have an alumni network. Of course, I didn't come from wealth. And this whole space of VC-backed companies, or just VCs in general, was so foreign to me. But Grid 110 allowed me to, it kind of educated me on like who all the players are and how I need to construct a pitch, and down to what a pitch book should look like. So really helping me with the fundamentals. But then at the same time, Grid 110 was also that connector. So through Grid 110, it was where I met Anna Barber, who ran the Techstars accelerator at the time. So we were able to get into Techstars. Through Grid 110 was the first time I met Austin Clemens, who is the managing partner at Slauson, who invested in us in the seed and pre-seed and seed. And so not only was I, you know, really brought up to speed on how to actually fundraise and what this whole world of VC-backed tech company is, it also connected me to some like very, very critical investors that have been extremely helpful to me and continue to be a support and ally for Finli. So I guess one of the biggest lesson for me is, just like Mickey, I'm also an introvert. You know, it takes a lot out of me to go and attend a networking event, and to go and mingle with VCs and people that I don't know. I'm a technical product person, so every conversation I have with an investor, I probably need to take a 5-minute nap afterwards just to recharge. Like, that's my personality, and it's just. And there are moments where I'm just like, should I bring in a CEO who can just pitch? Like, am I like a lot of second guessing myself, right? I'm a mom to 2 young kids. You know, I'm feeling mom guilt every day. I'm thinking, am I being selfish? Is this the right time? Am I the right person? So every day is a struggle. And then I'm like pitching to investors and raising capital. And then the more customers we bring on, the more investors we bring on, the more employees I hire. Like, I just feel the pressure is just piling, you know, exponentially, to a degree where, you know, you have to lean on others. And without a community of like-minded supporters of other VC-backed startups in a similar stage, or of accelerators and incubators like, you know, the great things that, you know, Mickey and team are doing every single day, I really don't think we can get to where we are. So I'm the type of person that needs a lot of support. You know, I check all the boxes of what VCs, I wouldn't say dislike, but can't quite understand, right? I'm an immigrant, my English sometimes is not that fluent. You know, I'm a mom to 2 young kids. So they do ask those questions, but not directly. Like, how old are your kids? You know, but then they throw out other type of questions just to have like get a feeler of like, what is your family situation like? Is your husband like, you know, how involved is he? Because, you know, I get it. They're investing money in a startup and they're expecting me to give like 100%. And as a mom, as a caretaker of seniors, you know, it's very difficult for me to commit to that. And so I do see how difficult it is for, you know, people like us, people like myself to go and raise capital. There's just a lot of unconscious bias and conscious bias out there. There are moments where, you know, I walk into a room and a VC, I remember so vividly, made the comment saying, you know, like, Lori, I hesitate, or I'm concerned about your ability to bring on a team. Why would you say that when you have no idea who I am, right? But just because I'm a female woman, like, am I supposed to be weak, you know? And then there are moments where he's like, oh, you need to speak up. I don't hear from you. That's because I'm being respectful to let you finish talking. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like there are moments where I'm just like, I can't win. So it's really about surrounding yourself with people who understands you and who you can actually connect with, and things will get easier. And then there are people that they dismiss you from the onset. You just have to dismiss them as well, because they just become a distraction. And you have to protect your mental health. You know, you have to protect what you have, because you have to keep going. Every day is going to be hard, and fundraising is probably the hardest thing I've ever done, and continues to be the hardest thing I do. And those are kind of like just random lessons. Just want to share. That's it.
Mickey, I have one more thought, Lori, that was so well said. And I think to Lori's point, one of the things that was told to me during our seed raise, not our pre-seed. I think of our pre-seed as the desperate times. I think of our seed raise as like, we actually held the reins better. But truly at no point in fundraising should you ever feel desperate. And although deep inside you're going to think to yourself, I can't build my business without these people, or I can't build my business without X or Y or Z, even if it's not capital or VC. You know, it might be the right CTO, or, you know, the right office space or brick and mortar space, if your business depends on that, the right supply chain. Just remember, every time you meet an investor or a partner or a potential employee, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And that was the switch flip in my mind, where I went from like begging for money to letting them beg for a stake in us, a stake in Ruth Health. And really just even remembering that. And if you're into affirmations, like say it in the mirror, say it in the morning after you wake up, put it on a Post-it note. Never forget that you are valuable, and they are literally in the business of investing in you. So they need you as much as you need them. And I think Lori's so right. Your mental health will suffer. I'm not going to lie. It will suffer from rejection. We've all been rejected probably at many points in our lives, but you need to surround yourself with the best possible people when you're fundraising, your family, your friends, your loved ones, people who lift you up, Mickey Reynolds, everyone at Grid 110, Maya, and lean on each other. And that is the last thing I'll say is having a community of other female founders, of other underrepresented founders. It is invaluable. If I didn't have my WhatsApp group of female founders where we, excuse my French, but like just constantly bitch at each other about our business, our investors, everything that goes wrong. I mean, we call it the disaster line. It's just like, we don't really go there to say, hey, I'm having a great day. We go there to be like, somebody just quit. Like, does anyone have a product person, you know? And that is a beautiful thing. Lean on each other.
Such important points. I mean, I think all these women have jumped through hoops on top of hoops on top of hoops just for being who they are in this industry. I think Alison said it really well when it comes to the power dynamic that can be at play when it comes to founders fundraising, that you have to remember that you are the opportunity. They are investing in you. They are investing in your idea and your innovation of what you're bringing to the table. And so never come to the table thinking that you are on the lesser end of that power dynamic. I think it always feels that way, but it is a privilege for them to be sitting on the other side of the table with you. It is a privilege for them to be getting on your cap table. So, not all money is good money. Make sure that you are being really excruciating and painfully doing diligence on them to make sure that you're taking those right opportunities. I have heard that it is harder to get an investor off your cap table than it is to get divorced. And so think about that when it comes to this very long-term relationship that you're going to have with these people, and to take it really seriously. I think we have time for maybe one more question, but I would love to know, and I think you've shared some of these things, but what's something that you wish you knew that nobody told you about this process? Or what is something that you wish other founders knew as they're going into this process?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a couple of things. And that's why I say planning is extremely important. Because, one of the thoughts that I had was, oh, you just go, you talk to a lot of investors and, someone writes you a check, or some people do, which ends up not really being the case. Like Alison said, talking to hundreds of investors. I don't remember how many I spoke to for our pre-seed. It was a crazy number of people from the beginning, just talking every day. In fact, I had days where I had maybe 10-minute breaks between my day. And I would talk to so many investors in one day and get so many rejections. So the big thing is going in knowing that rejection is normal. It's just part of it. It's because at the end of the day, think about it, like Mickey said, getting someone off your cap table is harder than getting divorced. You don't marry every single person that you meet. You might date a lot of people, you might like them, you might not. And that's what this is like, right? Like getting co-founders, investing, getting investors on your cap table. It is in fact supposed to be both ways. And we've all echoed the same thing, right? You have to like them as much as they like you. You have to know that they're invested in you as much as you need to, because the interesting thing is what I found is the more success you have, right, the more genuine and good people you need around you, especially when it comes from that investor standpoint. Because some investors might invest that first time and just disappear. Some of them might just not be the right people down the line. They might not coach you. They might have come, because of some of the things that we've mentioned, which are positives, but could be negatives, right? Some of them might just have invested because they heard that Serena Williams invested in me and they didn't really care about my company. And we've seen that play out over time, and it's a real fact. Some of them might have invested because they heard that you guys were in Y Combinator, Alison, right? And that's all they cared about. And, at the end of the day, you need a lot more than that. And we've seen that more and more in this financial state and this economy, where you really need some rock star, genuine people who will go to battle for you, because we're in very battlefield times right now, and it's important to have that at the back of the mind. The second thing that I wish I knew going into fundraising was that not everyone is supposed to be, is supposed to have your time, so to speak. Your time is extremely important. So selecting and picking the people that you actually have conversations with is extremely important, and doing major diligence before ever taking a call. There's sometimes in the fundraising period where you're just like, oh, I want to talk to as many people as possible. And it's like a numbers game. And it tends to formulate to be that way, but you have to be careful about that numbers game as well. You have to think through, okay, is this person investing within my category? Do they care about, in our case, women's health? Do they care about underrepresented people? Have they even invested in someone? Are they talking to me to learn about the space, or are they really ready for me? Because I spend a lot of time talking to a lot of big name investors who are just using us, clearly, I'll put it that way, to learn about this space, but we're not ready to make that investment. And you can come out of that feeling like, oh my God, my company is not right, and I'm not good enough for these people, et cetera, et cetera. But that's really not the case. The fact of the matter is they were not ready to invest in your space anyway. So there's no point going there. The other thing is, as you do that diligence, thinking through, have they invested in our competitors? That's a big thing that I found. A lot of people would send a lot of women investors to me and be like, hey, Crystal, you should talk to all these women investors. And I shouldn't have. The truth is, I didn't need to talk to all of those people, because a lot of them would talk to me and learn about, and trust me, in the early stages, you want to share everything. So they wanted to just learn about the company, but they had invested in a direct competitor and we're never going to make that investment. Never, period. So again, because this is such a big, and I say this just from like many fundraising like periods and just thinking through what it can actually do to your mental health, you have to be extremely protective of your mental health by preparing in this way, right? By thinking through, okay, is this the right person for me? Has this person invested in my space? Does this person care about my space? Do they only tweet about it, or do they actually do the work? Those are things you have to really be very conscious of, because you can leave those conversations either feeling super empowered and ready to kill it the next day, or you can leave that conversation actually closing down your company. So again, those are the things that I had to keep at the back of my mind. And I can't overemphasize this, every founder needs to keep it at the back of their mind. Am I talking to the right people? Are they also, the last thing, the right stage for me? Stage is extremely important, because when you get to a point where you're talking to Series A type investors in your pre-seed, it can be extremely discouraging, because a lot of times they were like, oh, listen to your story. They're like, you're doing all the right things. And they're like, at the end, they're like, sorry, can you come back in 6 to 12 months? And they don't really mean 6 to 12 months. They mean when you finish closing that round and you're raising the next round, right? So that's something that's important, because again, it's good to prep yourself for those later stage conversations and see what they're like. But if you're going with the mindset of this is just preparation, right? If it's just preparation, that's fine. But if you're going with the mindset of I need an investment from this person or this group of people, make sure they're the right stage for you. Make sure they're investing specifically at the time that you need that investment versus later on. So those are my things that I wish I knew very early that I eventually grasped.
I agree with everything Crystal said, and I'll just want to add one more is, when we're pitching to investors, they're looking at everything under their kitchen sink and all the pipes within there, and asking us a lot of questions. And one of the things that I just recently learned to ask them is like, where are you in your capital deployment cycle? It's a very valid question that you should ask, because if they just raise their fund and they're deploying, they're probably maybe being a bit more selective. If they are in the middle of their deployment cycle, then you know that they already figure out their thesis, like they know what they're looking for, and they have cash readily available to deploy. If you're going to be like their last check, then there's a high likelihood that you might not get it. And plus, follow-ons and others, there might not be enough in the pool for you left. So these are things that that I would recommend you to ask to really understand the health of their fund, like what stage is their fund when it comes to capital deployment. And then I guess another thing that I would like to share is it took me a long time to figure out how to dissociate my human self from me as a CEO when pitching to an investor, because just like the other ladies have mentioned, I also get rejected quite a bit, probably pitched to about like 300 VCs, and majority of them have said no or just like ghosted me, right? It's like their variation of no. And initially I didn't know how to reconcile that, right? Because to me, I'm just like, shit, this is my baby. Like, I can say I have an ugly baby, but you can't, like I had a tough time taking feedback and the rejection with the feedback, but then the reality is it's all helpful, right? At minimum, it helps you understand, like, how is this person thinking? How are they looking at you? And how, like, is there opportunity for you to improve your pitch? And really communication is how you're being presented through the lens of others, right? Like, what is the takeaway from the other person listening to you? Like, you might think, oh, they're going to think this is awesome. This is like $1 billion company. But to them, they're like, oh my gosh, you're supporting poor people. You're a first-time founder. You're like, all these things. And so sometimes I guess when it took me a little bit to realize that I was a little bit oblivious and numb to real feedback, right? And of course, once I did realize that, it hurt me because I couldn't dissociate my human self from my CEO, persona, because it was one, right? And my startup was my child, and I'm feeling like no one loved my child with all these rejections. So, but once I learned how to really dissociate, the two characters, then everything became a lot easier and the conversations became smoother. I had less pressure going into these conversations, and I was more, I guess, empowered to follow through and get the feedback, and also to dig in and understand how I can actually improve, right? So our lead investor in our most recent rounds, they actually rejected us for our pre-seed. And it was the first rejection I have received. And I remember crying. I remember, like, I really hate myself for it, but I remember when I got that first rejection, I didn't know how to like reconcile that. I was like, what do you mean you said no? Like, what do you mean I'm not, ready? So then, but then I took in the feedback and I really improved, on all of the items or components that they had issues with. And a year later, they, like, our stars aligned again, and they ended up not only investing but leading the round. So I just want to throw that out there. Like, anything happen, don't miss out on these opportunities to improve. Just be strong. Thanks.
Yeah, I love it. There's not much left to say, but I think these two brilliant ladies have underscored how difficult the process is, and I don't think anybody can truly explain that to you. You have to live it. But on the flip side, you've all done difficult things already. You wouldn't be here if you haven't done difficult things in your life. You wouldn't be here if you're not a glutton for punishment. I think you probably like doing difficult things and you like proving people wrong. So my final 2 points, like things that I wish I had known. The first is, when you deal with fundraising and building a business, you deal with constant rejection. That means you have to accept yourself unconditionally. Every time you get rejected by someone else, you have to do an equal but opposite amount of accepting yourself. And that was really hard for me to figure out at first. Go to therapy if you can. If you can afford it, go to therapy. There's a lot of affordable options. I think Kiira provides some. If you can, maybe not try to do everything. Like, if you're a parent, just focus on your family and your business. If you have a partner, just focus on your partner and your business. Like, my social life basically went down the toilet when I was fundraising, and that's fine. You can't be everything to everyone, and that's okay. Do little tiny things that fill your cup. And for me, that was getting a really like wild shade of lipstick. And to Lori's point, like, when I was pitching, I put on a color of lipstick that made me feel like a superhero. Super small thing. I don't know like what it is for you. It might be a pair of pants that make you feel good. It might be a new pair of glasses. It might just be getting your nails done. Like, whatever it is that makes you feel good in your skin, that's going to help you pitch. It's going to help you be more confident. And then my last piece of advice is, I didn't learn how to say no, truly say no, until our seed round. And, $3.1 million raised later, and a lot of iterations of this business, I figured out that saying no early on makes investors want you more. It's just like dating. You deny someone, you're like, I don't know, I'm iffy about you. You're cute, but I have a lot of options. They want you even more. So don't forget to create FOMO, create the fear of missing out, and be ready to tell somebody in an email before you even meet them, hi, I looked at your portfolio. It seems like you don't invest in women's health. It also seems like you don't invest in the seed round. Maybe it's a better idea for us to meet at another time. That's when they fight for you. So actually push back. I know it's scary, but push back before you even meet somebody in person, and have 1, 2, maybe 3 screening questions. Do you invest in my space? Do you invest in my round? And do you have capital? Is there dry powder, or are you full of shit?
I think a tiny thing I just thought about right now, just loving you guys' comments, is I guess the silver lining part of fundraising. For me, if you're going to go into a very like big fundraise or something like that is part of the planning is also like having some kind of routine that helps with your brain. For me, I made an investment in a Peloton the first time I ever fundraised. And it changed my life, you guys. This is not a Peloton ad, but what I would say is I would get on a bike before any meeting that I was scared about. And I would just have those people screaming at me and just telling me all these positive affirmations. And I would get off the bike all sweaty, take a shower, run to that meeting, and my brain would be supercharged. I don't know what it was, but it helped me really get through this. And I say, anytime I ever go into those kind of difficult situations or like a fundraise, and I say this to my Instagram followers or friends that know me, if I go through like, if you ever see me like working out like every single day consistently, I'm fundraising. That is my thing, because I'm like, nothing's gonna take away this mental health that it's like by all means necessary, right? Because at the end of the day, it's so important. My last fundraise, I did a 60-day challenge where I worked out every single day for 60 days. And I tell you, I looked great. I felt great. When I went into meetings, I just felt like a superhero, like you said, like Alison, like anything that's your thing that makes you feel like so positive about yourself. Because like I said, confidence is so important going into those meetings. If you look down and you look like you don't know what you're saying, someone else is going to feel that and they're going to be like, she's not ready. They're not ready, because we're all like, as underrepresented founders, women of color, like any category that you fall into, you know that you're going into that meeting being like, okay, this person might not be ready. You know, there's some kind of like, bias against you going in. So you have to come super ready and just cleansed and refreshed. And my thing was riding the bike every day. So again, find something that makes you feel really good in this process, and talk to as many people as you can through the process. Reach out to folks like us or anyone who who has fundraised ever, because they'll tell you the same thing. It's very hard. We were built to do hard things, like you said, Alison, and there's a little bit of crazy you have to be an entrepreneur and a founder. You have to really love it, and I can't overemphasize this. You have to love it and be like, okay, this person said no. Okay, I'm going to write this thing that they said and I'm going to tweak it and I'll change it and take feedback as many times as possible, because you become better every single time you pitch. You become so much better. You're like, I'm ready for these hard questions. Now I'm going to say it up front so this person doesn't ask me this thing that this other silly person asked me. So I'm going to be overly prepared. And by the time you're at the end of it, it becomes like, oh, this is working out. I mean, it's not going to be all roses and easy, but it's always going to be working out. And one thing I remember from my first day at Grid 110 was, there was something that was said to the tune of, you have to fall in love with you have to actually fall in love with the problem and not quite the solution itself. Because through those, rounds of feedback and rejection and everything else, what you find is you reiterate and you refine and you pivot your product. I started out thinking I was going to do an app for chatting with a doctor. We started as a chat app, and we evolved to a telemedicine company through COVID, and we evolved and we opened up a clinic in LA. It's gonna, the solution that you are, trying to solve for is going to change over time. You're going to pivot over time many, many, many times. But once you get that feedback on a regular basis, talking to 300 plus people ends up being a privilege because you're not there's nothing you can throw at me that's not going to bring me on the other side stronger. So something just to keep in mind. There's the negative sides of it, but there's also these really strong, empowering things that I always remind myself of. And I want you guys all to take as you go into your potential fundraisers. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you all so much for your honesty, your transparency, your candor. I think these are things that you don't often hear talked about outside of those group chats and those private sessions with a glass of wine. So I really appreciate you coming in and creating this space of vulnerability to share about these experiences. Do want to be mindful of time for Alison, Lori, Crystal. If you have 2 minutes, I would actually love to hear a little bit more about kind of fundraising in this current climate. Or if either of you have thoughts on this, what is it like now? How are you feeling impacted? What are things that founders should know?
I do have to jump. Thank you guys so much. And I have no thoughts about fundraising right now. I don't even want to go there. You got this, Crystal. Thanks, Lori. Thanks, Miki. Bye, guys.
So I guess my only thought is, yes, it has become incredibly difficult. I know, like Alison just jumped off, but I know people have become super creative about fundraising and how to fundraise. So Miki, to your initial point, that was like some people are going the route of crowdfunding now. I believe they even have a Republic fundraise that's open. Is it Republic? Yeah, so plug for them, find their crowdfund so you can participate in the Ruth Health's crowdfund. That is something that has been there. Another thing in this climate is what I've seen is people are only investing in things that are sustainable. The era of like big ideas that you have to spend a lot of money to start has been dwindling. So for us, we've had to pivot intensely. Like we've had to focus only on things that make us money today and things we can build on top of. As a technology company, a lot of times we've had to like build so much technology and it's extremely expensive, you know, to build a telemedicine product that you have to do security and compliance and XYZ, like those things require way more money than $1 million, $5, $10 million. It's the truth. And finding this out, you know, as you continue to grow as an underrepresented founder is kind of like, it's wild, right? Because you're like, okay, I thought that million was it. And then you're like, it finishes in moments and you're like, oh, now I'm going to fundraise again. And then that one's gone and, you know, XYZ. But I think right now what we're seeing within our company is, you know, we've had, and this is why it's important to choose the right investors. We've had a lot of our seed investors participate now. So always pick investors who have a big enough fund size, who care enough to follow on. Because in times like what we've seen today, there's going to be investors who are just focused on their portfolio and that's all they're focusing on. And that's what we've seen, right? The folks who have participated off the bat have been our lead investors from like previous times, who are like, okay, we're going to help you guys get through this, basically. So it's something to keep in mind. And also just trying to find ways to be careful with your capital and lean. So we've been leaner. Unfortunately, I made this joke. I had to let go 5 people and I woke up the next day and Amazon laid off thousands. And I was just like, okay, that's okay. You know, we're all part of this ecosystem. You know, we're making opportunities for people, you know, but at the same time, we're growing these baby companies that need extra love and tender care. So again, going back to be, you know, easy with yourself in a climate like this and, you know, being very happy about little trajectories of like positive things. Because for us, we're like, okay, you know, fundraising has been hard, but recently we got into this program with Goldman Sachs, a launch with Goldman Sachs program. And for me, I was just like, that is a progression because they're going to help us close our Series A, basically, right? So again, it's keeping those things in mind. And that has just been my experience. We haven't done a crowdfunding round, just because we didn't feel like it was the right positioning for us. Again, some things are they're not for everyone. So something to keep in mind. If you are interested in crowdfunding and you feel like you have the product, the story and everything, and you have the network and community to do that, that is best for you, go that route. But if you are thinking about going to VCs in this moment, just go to VCs who have invested recently, because some large funds are not investing currently. So you have to think through, have they made any recent investments? And am I strategically positioned to be able to grow a business that, you know, can be profitable sooner rather than later? So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, we are actually, I'm getting ourselves ready to fundraise and hopefully close in Q3 or Q4 this year. And what makes it really difficult is I feel like the target for, we will be raising for our Series A. I feel like the target for a Series A, as with every other round, is a moving target now, more so than ever, because I hear feedback from some investors like, oh, 1 million ARR. And then others like, no, who cares about ARR? It's just about month-over-month growth. And then I have like other investors like, no, you need to be at least like 6x, you know, where you ended last year. So all this is to say it's all over the place, and we even have a difference in opinion from two individuals from the same fund, giving us, oh yeah, you'd be fine with like 3 million AR, and the other one's like, you got to be at like 6. So all this is to say is that it's a total shit show. Nobody knows what's going on. There's no benchmark to what what the kind of like the favorable profile is looking like. You just have to do you, right? And I think it rests more importantly than ever on how you're pitching and positioning your value proposition and how you're differentiated and where the future of your startup is headed. And I think to tell that story in a very crisp way is something that we all through this tough time have to be re-educated or reintroduced, right? Like if we think that we were able to raise $10 million pretty easily from insider rounds and these investors, that's no longer the luxury or the environment that we have now. Rounds are closing a lot slower. They're evaluating a lot more. They're looking much deeper on your cohort analysis and financials. And then at the end of the day, you are competing against the other deals that's on their table. And there are many, and to be fully candid, outside of a Series A, I'm also actively considering a seed plus, if Series A is going to be too hard. So if we're going to raise a seed plus, we're going to be in the same boat as all of you who's raising a seed too, right? To compete against the funds that's readily to be allocated or available, whatever that's left to be allocated. So it's really about understanding their deal flow as well. And it's just to me, I feel like it's a very scary time. Like I'm not looking forward to it, as I mentioned, how much I dislike fundraising and more so than ever. This is also a time where I feel like I have to be more buttoned up than ever and get a deck ready, make sure it's being reviewed, or pay somebody to do it. For our pre-seed, I didn't even have a deck. That is not garbage level. I feel, like I think I have like the necessary slides, but does it really look that good? Does it really tell the story in a cohesive way? The answer is no. And I don't think our seed deck was that big of an improvement from the pre-seed deck. So now it's almost like kind of a full-on, getting ready and just really to professionalize ourselves for fundraising. It's not something I look forward to, but we're going in that direction.
Thank you both. We know it's a tough time out there, but I think you two are prime examples of that it is possible, and that you should really focus on making those incremental steps forward. And it may take longer than you anticipate, but you're keeping moving forward in that, one step at a time direction, and will take you hopefully where you end up needing to go. All right, Maya, I'm going to turn it over to you. Lori and Crystal, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, your knowledge, for sharing everything with us. Got another kind of couple of sessions coming up, and I think especially on getting